Hello, I've been riding a new four-wheeled scooter from Switzerland called the Quadro4. Think of a three-wheeled leaning scooter like Piaggio's MP3 or Yamaha's Tri-City, but with two wheels at the back instead of one. That's more or less it. Now, I won't pretend to understand why bicycles and motorcycles don't fall over. A century of research has barely arrived at consensus on the question. What I can tell you is that the forces at work on the Quadro4 feel very slightly different. Where three-wheeled scooters more or less mimic the sensation of riding a two-wheeler, the Quadro4 just feels a little bit more foreign. Like any two-wheeler and any of those three-wheelers, you change lean angle on a Quadro4 by counter steering. On this four-wheeler, the connection between the handlebars and lean angle just feels a little bit less direct than I'm used to. The tilting suspension system offers hydraulic resistance to leaning, and that can make it feel like it wants to run wide in corners. It won't though. It's capable of up to 45 degrees of lean, according to the makers. It just requires more input through those bars, and that takes a bit of getting used to. Two-wheelers, fortunately, usually naturally want to go in a straight line, but at low speed, I felt the Quadro4 was also a little bit more inclined to go left or right, especially moving away. Give it a handful of throttle when moving off and it went dead straight, but that takes a bit of getting used to too. But you might as well give it a handful of throttle when you're pulling away, because the Quadro4 is not very fast. It makes 30 horsepower from a 346cc single-cylinder engine that weighs a claimed 257 kilograms dry. Put it this way, a Porsche had absolutely no problem in beating me away from the traffic lights. The speedometer has its own red line at 130 kilometers an hour, that's 80 miles an hour. At that point, it's also on the red line on the rev counter at just over 8,000 RPM. It's comfortable, although I found the brake pedal clashed with my right foot so that my toes were sticking out over the edge of the footboard. And there's enough wind protection from that black screen. Four wheels make for a smooth ride, and the tilting system means the chassis can stay vertical on uneven surfaces. There are 4 brake discs, one at each wheel. The right-hand lever applies the front brakes only, while the left applies all 4, and the brake pedal also applies all 4. Now that's a lot of stopping force for a scooter, even one that weighs 250 kilograms. A stamp on the pedal stops it very quickly. There's no ABS, but there is a lot of traction. The front brake alone was less effective, so I fell into using just the pedal as if I was driving a car. It's got a handbrake and a tilt lock lever to stop it toppling over. Applying the brakes increases the hydraulic tilt resistance anyway, and in practice that was enough to let me keep both feet up on the boards without it toppling over at traffic lights. The importer sees it as a London vehicle, and given the popularity of MP3s in the capital, there's probably a market for it. The importer also says it will be granted congestion charge exemption, although you'll have to apply for it on an individual basis, like you have to with the MP3. In practice, the enforcement cameras read front number plates, the Quadro4 and the MP3. They don't have front number plates. Swiss maker Quadro says it's classed as a three-wheeler under European law, so drivers who pass their car test before January the 19th, 2013 are entitled to ride one and a Piaggio MP3 LT without taking a motorcycle test. If they did their car test later, they will need an unrestricted motorcycle licence or an A2 motorcycle licence. Also, like the MP3 LT, you can ride the Quadro4 legally without a crash helmet if you really want to do that. It did 62.9 miles per gallon on my test ride, calculated from fuel receipts. That should give it a range of just over 200 miles from its 15-litre tank. No doubt some drivers will be tempted by a four-wheeled vehicle that can slice through traffic, and the Quadro4 will filter. It's narrow enough, widest at the bars just like a motorcycle. For people already on two wheels or even three, I'm not entirely sure what the benefit of that extra rear wheel is. In practice, I suspect the benefit of so much grip at the back end will be mainly psychological. The Quadro4 costs $8,499 on the road. For another $200, you could get the two-wheeled Yamaha T-Max, which is much faster, a lot more powerful and much more fun, and it has a bit more space under the seat. The Quadro4 has space for one helmet under there. The T-Max will take a helmet and there's enough space left over to wedge in a bag. Or you could get Piaggio's MP3 500 Sport three-wheeler for $7,632 on the road, with 10 more horsepower and space for 2 helmets under the seat.